What's going on, everybody? Thanks for watching. Welcome to part 2 of the reclaimed vanity build. Here I'm rough sawing some old house studs down to length to make the top width. After I get done cutting them to a rough length, I'll take them over to the table saw to resaw them. And you can see that's precisely what I'm doing right here. Now, the boards are not square, so it's not a perfect resaw, but for the sake of this project, it gets the job done for me. I don't like resawing on my bandsaw because basically I suck at it and my bandsaw doesn't have a ton of power, and I feel like the blade just waves around too much and I've never really taken the time to set it up. So if anyone wants to coach me up on setting up my bandsaw, I would very much appreciate it. So I cut them all down to a little over an inch and then go over to the joiner and take that flat side, and if it's not flat and had some saw marks in it, I'll run it face down on the joiner and then give myself a 90-degree angle on one edge. What this does here is helps me to square the boards on 3 sides and then leave that rough sawn top. Once I have one side jointed, I take it over to the table saw once again and square the other side with it. I don't have these dimensioned. What I actually do is just slightly graze the opposite side with the saw blade. That way I can get as much board as possible from these old reclaimed pieces. When you're using something that doesn't have the uniformity, you kind of don't really notice, and the top itself ended up looking pretty damn good, even though all the boards were varying in anything from an eighth to a quarter inch in width. So once I'm done with that, I go over and orient the boards the way I want them and glue them up. I'm using rapid fuse here because I knew I could quickly do this, and the product dries in 30 minutes. After that, it's on to panel making for the rest of the cabinet. The rough sawn pieces here will be used for the exterior shelves on the cabinet, as well as the doors and the door panels. So as you can see, just a bunch of resawing and getting widths, thicknesses, and dimensions down. I use the same process as I did for the top. The reclaimed wood works pretty well. I take it over to the joiner once again, square up the sides, and give myself some panels that fit up nice and square. I'm gluing up 2 at a time here in some parallel clamps, and I'm using rapid fuse again because it dries super quick and lets me keep working while I'm working on other stuff. That's the same reason I used it on the top, is so once the top's dry, I'll be able to have these in the clamp and then get working on that. Chugging along here, I'm using the miter gauge to cut all my rails and stiles for the door panels down to final dimension. I pre-marked everything because somehow I break everything too and broke the stop on my miter gauge. So I'm cutting everything to a pre-marked length and then going over and cutting the slots for the door panels themselves. I didn't feel like putting the dado stack in because I'm lazy, so I just cut the slots to the dimension I wanted them using the standard rip saw blade I had in the table. I just flip it around a couple times and remove that center piece. You can see here that piece comes out after I turn it, and maybe I have to go back in with a chisel and snap it off, or just adjust the fence. So once I have the panel grooves cut out of the center of all the rails and stiles, I go ahead and mark each piece where I want to cut the tenons that will be inserted into the slots for the tops and bottoms of the doors. I'm not a cabinet maker by any means, but I got this technique from Jay Bates' channel. I'll leave a link down in the description, and you guys can check out how he makes cabinets. Ton of great info, and you don't need a ton of tools. A lot of guys use different bits in their router and different bits on some other techniques. Use a vertical tenoning jig and whatnot, but this works out pretty well, and then I just go over with a chisel and clean up the cheeks on all the tenons. So this part's pretty cool. What I got here is a brush sander, and Makita makes it. I'm fortunate to work with a local tool provider called Meyers Company, who I'll link in the description as well, that had one of these and lent it to me for this build to demo. Now, for this reclaimed stuff, a lot of guys on Instagram were telling me how awesome of a tool it was, and I could not agree more. You can just see how easily it's taking off all the dust and grime and dirt and all the stuff that's been on there for decades, and it's just exposing the saw marks. What it's actually doing is sanding down the soft grain and leaving a smooth finish to the touch that I barely had to go back with and do anything with my orbital sander on. Pretty awesome tool, and I will definitely be purchasing it. I was stoked to be able to use it for this video, so big shout out and thanks to Meyers Company. So what I used to do before having this was use the wire wheel on my grinder, and it did a similar thing. It just took a lot longer and beat your hands up pretty good. So the tool itself just has a spinning brush with a bunch of small pieces of sandpaper, it seems like, on it. So after I get that all sanded down, I cut it to size and then go back in with my Rotex and hit it with 220 grit just to soften the edges and get it down to a little bit smoother of a finish. After that, I'm going to glue the doors together and start here with the false front that will go on the drawer that actually doesn't exist because it's a vanity, and you don't put a drawer under a vanity because the plumbing has to go there. So here's how I did that. I know I don't use any balls in the door assembly here, but that door won't be moving, so it shouldn't chatter at all, and it'll have the same look as it continues to move and expand over time. So I repeat the same thing here with the actual doors, and it's a pretty simple process. A little bit of glue on the ends. This I actually did put the movement balls in because I only had a few. I cut corners on the door, but essentially just glue this bad boy up and drop the panel in and throw it in the clamps, the same as the false front. Here, moving on to the fun stuff. I am applying a water-based polyacrylic to the top of the vanity. I'm a big fan of the water-based polyacrylic. Here I'm using a company called Pure Shield, and their stuff builds up very nicely, and I've been using it for about a year now, and I really enjoy it. If you watch me on Instagram a lot, I tag their stuff a ton, and I use it on almost all of my builds, basically in case I run out. I don't use it. That's the only time I don't. Love their product, love the look it gives, and you can see here it applies pretty easily. It was super windy out, or I would have sprayed the tops. I always like spraying reclaimed wood just because it makes it a lot easier to get in all the small nooks and crannies. So I put 4 or 5 coats on this. It sucks it up pretty good, and sanded between coats once the grain stood up. So moving down, these are actually the panels that'll be on the interior of the cabinet for the inside of the box that'll be where the vanity sits on top of. Once you get the reclaimed wood sawn down, the interior guts of it have some pretty cool looks. You can see here it's contrasting with the rough sawn outsides, and it's got a really cool look to it. I was back and forth on how I wanted to do these doors, and the client approved it as well as most of my followers on social, so I went with this look. Finished up really nice, and I was really pumped with it. The finish itself goes on super easy, as you can see, and once again I just knocked down all the graining with some 400 grit after this stuff dried, and it dries pretty quick, so this didn't take me any long at all. And lastly, these are the exposed shelves that are on the outside of the Vanity. They look awesome, and I was super stoked with how they turned out. Here I'm assembling the box. This is the base going in. I'm using some tabs there, as you can see, and I will countersink and screw these sides in and attach them similarly after I get this in here. I'm just using 5/8 inch button head screws, and then I'll build the box around that. There's some slop in the holes for movement, and I haven't had any issues with this technique so far. So there's me attaching the sides. Now I'm dropping in the open shelving on the outsides as I walk around like a jagoff and try to find my screws and my drill, as I consistently do. Unfortunately, I lost the footage for attaching the doors, but I used the standard European hinge and countersinked those, and they went on pretty smoothly. You can check those out here.
So that's a wrap for this project. This project was a lot of fun. It was a pretty good challenge, being that there was a lot of welding and woodworking in the cabinetry aspect, as that I don't normally do as well. So you guys that follow me a lot know that I hate doors and drawers, but I got put to a challenge here and I enjoyed it. It came out amazing. I'm super pumped about it, and I sent some pictures to the client. They're stoked as well. The only thing I have left to do is put the pulls on the front, which the client has, and drill the hole for the vessel sink. That will sit right here. So if you like this project and you like what I do, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. A share would be awesome as well. And if you have any questions, go ahead and throw those down below. I do get a lot of questions after people watch my stuff on how I join metal and wood and how I fasten stuff. So if you have any of those, go ahead and send those down below. Also, check me out on social media, Instagram mostly. I post a ton of content on there, especially the live feed. Daily interactions with a lot of my followers, which is awesome. I get to answer a lot of questions. I get to ask a lot of questions as well too. So that's really fun. Shoot over there, John_Malecki, and shoot me a follow if you're into that. And also check out my website. I've been putting out a ton of content lately and really trying to step up the blog. I'm doing tool reviews, and I also have a step-by-step guide to how I kind of got to where I am in the maker sphere. A lot of people really ask me, you know, where did you start? How do I get my stuff out there? How do I get people to find me? And I go through about a lot of that in my blog series on Build Your Own Workshop. So if you like that, go ahead over to johnmalecki.com and check that out too. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.